Ah, yes, Schein Time on a Manic Monday. The madness over the weekend was just incredible. St. John's, wow. A dramatic last-second win to advance to the Sweet 16. We're all over it. Buzzer beaters, upsets, insanity. We have takes on everything. Syracuse has a new head coach, and it's awesome. Rough time for the haters. And the Lakers are on fire. California Post Lakers reporter Kobe Price joins us live. Schein Time starts right now.
Don't stop. Keep it coming, baby. Don't stop.
St. John's, baby, let's go. How about it? Look, that was absolutely awesome. And if you are a college basketball fan, if you are a St. John's fan, that is one you are going to remember for a long time. Oh, my darling, are you kidding me? That was just ridiculously amazing. Dylan Darling able to score his only points of the game at the buzzer on a layup, a brilliant play design by Rick Pitino, great execution by Dylan Darling. Church bells, because his onions in those kind of spots, absolutely off the charts. This was awesome in every possible way. And look, I was just mesmerized. I was obsessed. I was impressed. I couldn't get enough. This was a thing of beauty. And look, St. John's was kicking ass and taking names for 30 minutes. And, you know, frankly, the fact that they were a 5 seed, the fact that they were kicked out west, the fact that Zuby wasn't an All-American, I mean, let's be honest, it all mattered. And then Destiny's darling, baby. I mean, my goodness. Credit Kansas for the comeback, but credit St. John's for having the toughness, the defensive principles, the Rick Pitino coaching. They never wavered. They never waffled. And after the game, both Coach Pitino and Darling broke down how that final play call came about.
We are so excited. It's so jubilant to see the locker room right now. It's been a while. But here's the amazing thing and the funniest thing I've ever been involved with. So we're going to run a play, but they got fouls to give. And Bells comes up to me and says, run power, which is a high back screen pick and roll. So I walk away. I said, okay, power. I walk away and said, wait a second. He hasn't scored a bucket, and he wants to run a play for himself. And then I'm thinking as I'm walking, I said, but he's Bells. And not only did he do it, he went with his right hand. So I'm real proud of him, because to want the ball when you haven't made a shot is unbelievable.
You know, by the time they ran out of fouls, I think there was probably 4 seconds left in the play the coach was trying to run. There wasn't enough time for it. And, you know, I threw the suggestion out, and, you know, I don't think coach really had a choice at that point in time. So we went with it, and, you know, I probably don't deserve this. I was pretty bad all night long, but you know, my teammates held it down tonight. You know, everybody stepped up, including this dude right here, and just happy to keep this thing rolling.
Dylan, is this your first buzzer beater, or have you hit something like this before?
This is my first one in college. First one.
What'd you do in the NBA?
Well, I'm saying I played in high school and middle school, coach. You know, I didn't just start playing ball. This, I don't know. You know, I'm not sure. This, I can't remember. Maybe.
I mean, the likability of this team is just off the charts. And we told you that St. John's was going to win. And clearly what transpired in terms of the seed mattered. Go back to even Friday nights. That was just ass-kicking right from the jump and right from the get-go. And this is what happens when you have a truly great team and you have a Hall of Fame coach. And for Darling to have the chutzpah in so many ways to tell his coach, run that play for me, and then for Rick Pitino on a night where, let's be honest here, Darling couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. But he knew that in that moment, in terms of play call and trust, that was incredible. Bill Self at the end. I mean, Bill Self can't coach his way out of a paper bag. I don't care about the championships. I mean, look at all the examples of, you know, Bill Self when he's been a higher seed and his team has lost throughout all the years in the NCAA tournament. And honestly, wasn't a fair fight in terms of Pitino, who is an all-timer, and Bill Self, who, you know, I know he has the championships, but honestly, very lucky to be in the position that he's in. And you saw Self just erroneously fouling, not playing the clock game, made absolutely no sense. And then for Pitino to have the mindset and the wherewithal and the confidence, and that matters. And what he instills in his team, terrific, tremendous, sensational. I just loved it. And, you know, the game was obviously legendary at the end. And Dylan Darling, oh my darling, is right. That was insane. Frankly, St. John's could have absolutely won this one by 20 points. You know, even with the lead at halftime, they could have been up even more. I mean, their defense was suffocating. Peterson was a non-factor. I was so impressed and obsessed with what Hopkins was able to do. 18 points in the game, 6 threes. Zuby Ejiofor was unbelievable. And this was vintage Rick Pitino, wasn't it? I mean, and now if you're a St. John's fan, you're thinking, you know what? We can beat anyone. We could beat anyone. And that ambiance in Washington, D.C. is going to be off the charts coming up on Friday night. You're going to have Duke taking on St. John's, with St. John's having a golden opportunity to win that game. And when you think about Coach Pitino and you start thinking about Duke, well, you think about this.
Mike, the other day, I'm not big into watching like Yellowstone and shows like that on the iPad, but everybody's convincing me to watch this Paradise. And I was so sick of commercials with Christian Laettner hitting that shot over and over and over. So, okay, I'll watch Paradise. In the first episode of Paradise, the President of the United States has a thing called, no, he didn't say Laettner, he said Wildcat or something to do with Laettner's shot. And I said, that's cruel. Why would my staff and friends tell me to watch Paradise? And throughout the whole episode, it's that. But I've been on winning at the buzzer and losing at the buzzer. And tonight, a player, I just can't imagine a player today, in today's world, with all the scrutiny, wanting the ball when he's shooting terrible. I got on him because he was digging and left the three-point shooter alone. And we weren't supposed to dig. We were supposed to stay on him at home. But for him to want the ball in that scenario just speaks volumes of what he's all about, confidence and going on the next play. So you win some, you lose some, and I'm hoping we can get Duke at the buzzer next to make up for that Christian Laettner shot.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll always ring for Pitino, no question about it. And listen, I'm going to stay very consistent here, right? I think Duke is going to win this game. I think Duke is cutting down the nets. Now, this region, when you look at the East, is unbelievable. And if you're being honest and objective here, and we talked about it, I thought St. John's should have been a 4, closer to a 3 than a 5. And the 4 teams that are playing on the eastern side of the brackets, we projected. This is not a surprise to me. I think St. John's has a real shot to win this game. I think that St. John's is absolutely going to be up for it. They have a Hall of Fame coach. I love John Shire. I thought Duke played brilliantly in the second half against TCU. I'm going to pick Duke to win a close game. But this is not one of those, classic 1 versus 5s. Not at all. St. John's will absolutely have a chance to win. Look, I think the upside for St. John's, and I'm picking Duke to win a championship. There are 16 teams left. The upside for St. John's is to cut down the nets. Like, that's the conversation we need to have. If they beat Duke, and that to me is a realistic possibility, obviously they can beat UConn. They just beat UConn. They can beat anybody in the country. So today is a day to believe. Today is a day to dream. If you're a St. John's fan, you have to love the spot that you're in right now. And I just can't stress enough just how much I am obsessed here when you take a look at what St. John's was able to do, how they beat Kansas, that they beat Kansas, and the likability of this St. John's team is off the charts. The toughness, the coaching, the way they play when it matters the most. This is a vintage New York City St. John's team. The NCAA tournament always better when St. John's is relevant and dominant and likable like this. You could color me obsessed here with Rick Pitino and with what his St. John's team was able to bring to the table. How they dealt with adversity late, And that darling shot, that is genuinely one for the ages. And look, it's not out of the realm of possibility. We get UConn and we get St. John's once again coming up in the Elite Eight. And, man, I was so excited for St. John's, Kansas. That was my favorite game on Sunday. UConn and UCLA on paper going into the day was my second favorite game. And listen, I thought that UConn really deserved so much credit. And, you want to talk about an absolute stud. Karaban, you the man. And Alex Karaban, best player on the team. He was sensational. He was tough. He was clutch. You take a look at what he was able to do. 27 points, career high. This is a fourth-year senior, two-time champ. And, it's unbelievable when you take a look at his numbers. You look at the flow. Talked to Dan Hurley today on my Sirius XM radio show. And he said, look, Karaban has been there, understands the situation, but he's also learned from some games, like the Marquette game. Hurley gave me that as an example, where, Karaban might, I don't want to, I did my words, float a little bit, and sometimes you have to be assertive and take over. And I love that Karaban, was holding his chest. UConn, it's, a big deal. It's pride. It's the UConn Dan Hurley Husky standard, which is a real thing. And Coach Hurley gushed about a star player after the game.
Just the greatness of the man next to me, just the should be celebrated at all corners of the media. And I know he's gonna start. Look, he's getting uncomfortable right now. But yeah, I mean, this man's greatness and what he's done in college basketball the 4 years. I mean, like literally every outlet should be doing a story on this man and just his career in college. It's no one's been better in college sports the last 4 years in terms of being a winner. So thank you, Alex. I think what you saw with AK tonight was a guy who I think in some of those, late season games, some of those losses that were disappointing for us, he left those games with some, where he didn't go out with his guns blazing. I think what you're going to see, what you saw or what you've seen in this NCAA tournament is a guy that's attacking the game. He's aggressively looking for all of his shots. He's working his way to the ball. He's driving the ball, and I just think that he learned a lot from like that Big East championship game, that game at Marquette, where it's like he left those games not going out on his shield the way a player of his caliber should. So, I think that's the difference. He's not going down without firing all of his bullets.
Man, I absolutely love that. And you heard Hurley reference what he told me today on my SiriusXM radio show. And Karaban is terrific. And you look at Reed, and he had that 31 and 27 on Friday night against Furman. And this game called for him to be more of an all-around role player, and it was 10 points and it was 13 rebounds, and his defense was terrific. And Tyrus Reed is one of the best bigs in all of college basketball. And you take a look at even like someone like Mullins, who's so young, and Hurley said to me today, look, took him a second in terms of feeling the flow as a young cat playing for UConn. And, you take a look at what transpired where Solo Ball was struggling and, had to obviously get him out of the game. That's pure coaching. That's what makes Dan Hurley great. And listen, as he said, talking to him today on my radio show, it's at this stage, it's not about feelings. It's about survive in advance and get on to the next game, and that's what matters. And you saw Ross come off the bench and pump in 11, and Silas wasn't 100% healthy. He's got that high ankle sprain. He gave UConn hard-earned 21 minutes. That was incredible to watch. So I just loved what I saw in terms of the moments. Love what I saw in terms of the toughness. This is a UConn team under Dan Hurley that understands the moment, understands what it's all about. And, obviously UCLA, their best player didn't play, and that was a big deal. But, the first 30 minutes, competitive game, Mick Cronin, he could be a piece of work, but his teams obviously play hard and play strong, and it was ridiculously incredible to watch. And I just loved every single second of what we saw from UConn, and I expect them to beat Michigan State. Like, I would be surprised And talking to Hurley today about Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo is an idol of his, a mentor of his. You know, if Dan has a tough loss, you know, he will get a text from Tom Izzo. And, you know, they have such love and appreciation and respect. And they're, you know, cut from the same cloth in terms of how they coach and how they go about their business. I just think the world here of this coaching matchup. And I think at this stage, right, Dan Hurley is a better coach than Tom Izzo. Like, I don't even know how you can deny that. I know it's cute on X or social media, say, oh, it's the month of Izzo. No, it's the month of Dan Hurley. This is who he is. This is what he does. I think he has proven over the last 5 years, and I live for Tom Izzo. He's been a coach than Tom Izzo. He's moved past Tom Izzo. And this Michigan State team, to me, has not been a classic in any way, shape, or form Michigan State team. I picked UCLA to beat them a few Fridays ago here on Schein Time in the conference tournament. That hit as a best bet. And I think UConn is absolutely going to take care of business. And look, I hate the fact for UConn that it's another late tip. You know, and by the way, seriously, Dan Hurley said they've had to adjust their practice schedule because they got all these games that are starting at 10 at night. You know, this is going to be the case in Washington, D.C. as well. Tom Izzo is a legend. Tom Izzo is a god. Tom Izzo is a Hall of Famer. I firmly believe that if you're doing in the New York Post a tale of the tape, in terms of all the different measuring sticks that you use in terms of determining who's got the edge in a certain matchup, the check mark in the newspaper would go to UConn when it comes to coaching. So I am pretty fired up here for Dan Hurley to show the world that coaching advantage favors UConn versus Michigan State. Meanwhile, it was a family affair for Iowa Star of the Night.
I'm so lucky to have her as a mom.
And she hasn't seen you play in 2 years.
Yeah. She saw me with the national team this summer, but in college basketball, she came to one game when I was a freshman, and I didn't play much. So yeah, I think she coming back after 2 years, and you know, seeing where I am right now and how much I worked for be where I am right now is for her is a great feeling because she's saying 16-year-old kid to America without knowing any English, without absolutely, you know, anything but dreams and hunger, and this one is for her and my dad that is watching up there.
Man, that's great stuff. And not to go all cliche on you, but that's what it's all about, right? In terms of Alvaro Figueres able to hit that shot, absolutely incredible. And, you know, he's got a great bond with his mom. His dad passed away when he was young, and that was incredible. And how about Iowa able to knock out Florida? First one seed, only one seed, knocked out of the tournament. The defending champs bounced in the round of 32. That was just incredible here. And, you know, the entire thing, if you're a fan of Florida, or if you bet Florida or have Florida going far in your bracket, I thought Todd Golden embarrassed himself. First of all, when you take a look at wanting to foul to prevent the 3 up 2, just play defense when Iowa had to go to the length of the court. That was terrible strategy. Made no sense. And the risk reward, it's exactly what transpired. You're going to leave a shooter wide open for the 3. So the priority wasn't right. The coaching was terrible. And then Florida gets a shot, and they couldn't even get a shot off. They had time on the clock. That was unacceptable. That was garbage. And look, I didn't have Florida going to the Final Four. So in that regard, for my bracket of my picks, I was thrilled. I picked Houston out of that region. But that was terrible. So we're going to have Iowa taking on Nebraska, which, by the way, has all the vibes and the feel of a Big Ten Tuesday night game. It's a college football kind of game, which is kind of crazy. Nebraska taking care of business in the fashion that they did against Vandy. I can't believe it. I was so happy for my guy, Fred Hoiberg. I was absolutely thrilled that they were able to win in that kind of fashion. Nebraska hadn't won a game when you look at it in the NCAA tournament ever, and now they win 2. And I know this sounds funny. I mean, I couldn't believe that the half-court shot didn't go in. Like, normally that's not the case, right? You talk about a half-court shot, and it's a literal Hail Mary, and it's a prayer. That one was in. I mean, you've seen the replay. I mean, it hit every single element of the cylinder. I can't believe it didn't go in. Look at this picture. Look at this picture. How did this ball not go in for a majestic all-time shot? Honestly, the Big Ten looks great. I'm very into Iowa and Nebraska. I think that's going to be incredible. I picked Vandy to win that game. I was wrong on Vandy. It's a bad loss for Vandy, but I'm thrilled. Iowa and Nebraska, that is going to be terrific. These teams get there in terms of hard work, dedication. Iowa with that upset special, that was absolutely positively incredible. Now, in terms of more storylines from the NCAA tournament from this weekend, you know that I'm Acuff obsessed. And before Saturday's game, John Calipari had quite the comp for the confidence in his top stars that they have in themselves.
Stretch.
I want you to look at these two closely, okay? They have otherworldly confidence, both of them. They could run for president and believe I could run this country, because that's how they think. I like that they're starting to talk in huddles about let's do this, let's do that. They're being empowered.
Going to look at Acuff and what he brings to the table. 36 points, and one of the high points for me as a sports fan was watching what Acuff did going up against High Point late Saturday night, because High Point's a really good team, right? And it's basically a country club if you know anything about the college, so they pump a lot of money in. They're playing in like a pseudo NBA arena, and Acuff above the rest, absolutely. I thought he was the individual performer of Saturday and Sunday. And I know people compare him to Stephon Marbury. I shake and I throw up in my mouth every single time I hear that. He is so much better than Stephon Marbury. Stephon Marbury was not a great pro. Great in New York City in high school, great at Georgia Tech, but please, Stephon Marbury, all you need to know is that the Nets were a million times better when they made the Kid from Marbury deal. He was an overrated Nick. He was an overrated son. Acuff can absolutely carry this team in conjunction with John Calipari. And I know that the defense is suspect. I'm not sure I care. Like, to me, the better comparison is Damian Lillard. Like, that is the guy. Jamal Murray, who obviously has played great in big spots and won a championship, but to me, it's Dame time. And look at Acuff's numbers. And this is in the tournament, right? I mean, it's unbelievable what he's able to do. And he was kind of not going through the motions, but letting the game come to him. But then when it was time to take over and it was winning time, man, it's absolutely incredible. This freshman class is unreal. I think that Acuff has just been sensational. The best individual performer when you look at everything that has transpired. The best individual performer on Saturday and Sunday. Look, you could talk about Reed and what he did on Friday night, but Acuff is unreal. He's phenomenal for Arkansas. And listen, I think that all these games in the Sweet 16 are awesome, but this Arkansas-Arizona game, look, I have Arizona winning. I think that Arkansas is going to have a chance because this kid is special and John Calipari is unbelievable. So if I'm a fan of basketball, if I'm a fan of goodness and greatness at the point guard position, forget about this Stephon Marbury nonsense. That's not fair. You're watching a legend. You're watching Damian Lillard. I can't get enough. Acuff, more like A-tough in terms of just how great he is when it's crunch time. This cat is a blur, and his ability to score the basketball kind of reminds me a little bit, too, of Tyrese Maxey in terms of the power, speed, intelligence, court savvy. I just think the world of Acuff, and watching him play has just been majestic. Meanwhile, and we'll get into more topics and takes from the games over the weekend and what's going to transpire in the Sweet 16 as we move along here on Schein Time. My Orange, baby! We did it! Rough time for the haters. And you know who you are. All those hot take media elite folks, the Twitter tough guys. telling the world that Syracuse looks bad last week. Burgets, losers. Are you kidding me? Are you insane? We got our guy. We got Jerry McNamara. Jerry. And what has been my take from day one here on Schein Time? Syracuse needs to consider everything. And they got themselves the perfect choice to be the head coach. Because look, Jerry is an all-time great Syracuse player. His number is retired, won a championship, was there for 4 years, made shot after shot after shot, then was a 15-year assistant coach for Jim Boeheim and for Coach Autry, then goes to Siena. If you know anything about the history of Siena, took a minor miracle to turn this thing around, makes the NCAA tournament, and Duke had the largest deficit for any one seed ever in the history of college basketball in the tournament against the 16. That's all Jerry. You heard what John Shire said after the game. I got grossly outcoached. So that was the ultimate audition. Jerry should not have been the choice just because he's a Syracuse legend. We're talking about someone who understands what Syracuse is, what it isn't. Obviously, the alum are going to be all fired up. The athletic director, Brian Blair, said that Syracuse will be in the upper third in terms of the NIL in the ACC. That's a huge deal. Jerry's obviously phenomenal when it comes to X's and O's. Brian Blair, the AD, did an interview at a radio station in Syracuse with our friend Stephen Fonte, and he said we did not make an offer to anybody else, which, by the way, is true, and that has been confirmed by multiple journalists, including my guy, the great Pete Thamel from ESPN. So you had all those people falling for the banana in the tailpipe like it was a big deal, and it was false that Hodgson turned it down. He takes the Providence job, which is great. As a Syracuse fan and alum, this is the guy. I am just so fired up. And remember, we talked to Jim Boeheim on Schein Time about what kind of coach Jerry would be when he joined us on Schein Time's opening week. And I'm just thrilled Jerry McNamara made the tournament with Siena. And first and foremost, I want you to kind of hit this home on like a personal level, because he's a gem and he's your former star player and former assistant. And I saw an interview he did yesterday, and he said, you were the first call yesterday morning. I mean, take us through your feelings, your satisfaction, what that call was like, because that must have been so special for you.
Yeah, I mean, I love the kid, obviously. You know, what he did for us as a player was incredible. Assistant coach, great assistant coach. And he took over a program that was 4-28, and they're in the NCAA tournament. I don't know a much better turnaround than that in the last few years in college basketball. He knows how to coach. He's competitive. He lost his best inside player this year right at the beginning of the season, and then he lost a guard for the season who's really good, and then he just lost a forward that's one of his better players. So to win that tournament after losing those three guys is an amazing coaching job, and he's going to be a great coach someplace someday. I think he will get a job, and he certainly should be considered for any good open job in the country right now.
That's why we do these interviews here on Schein Time, and that wasn't the first time Coach Boeheim called out the haters for underrating Jerry Mack.
Without Jerry McNamara, we wouldn't have won 10 games this year. Okay? Not 10. And everybody's talking to me and writing about Jerry McNamara being overrated. It's the most thing I've seen in 30 years.
Oh, any excuse we have to run one of my all-time favorite sound bites. And look, it's awesome. We need to make sure when it's all said and done that Syracuse gets the NIL, but this is the perfect hire for Syracuse basketball, and I am absolutely positively overjoyed with the process and with, in a lot of ways, from a new administration, new chancellor, new athletic director, the patience, as Jerry McNamara is reportedly going to be the next head coach of my Syracuse Orange. From college hoops to the NBA, where the Lakers continue to streak.
Marcus Smart looking. Kennard to win the game. Yes! 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 Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard wins it for the Lakers. Welcome to the Lakers show, Luke Kennard. Welcome to the Lake Show. The best shooter percentage-wise from that distance in the NBA.
How about it? Luke Kennard with the game winner. Luke Kennard, of all people. The California Post, absolutely all over everything. So let's bring in our resident, outstanding California Post reporter. He does an unbelievable job covering all things left coast, the Lakers, and everything that matters here. And Kobe Price is nice enough to join us. Kobe, welcome to Schein Time, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Appreciate you having me on. I'm good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I am absolutely feeling great. And I'm just absolutely obsessed with the Lakers and how they're playing and how they're doing it. And Luke Kennard with the game winner of all people. I mean, this team's got it going on. How do you describe what's going on with these Lakers?
They're on a run. I mean, they're on fire, to be honest with you. I mean, 9 straight wins. They've been really on fire since the end of February, since being the Warriors in San Francisco. They're feeling good. I mean, if you're inside the locker room, the vibes are high. Everyone's just in a very good place. You know, some of these games they've won, you know, a couple game winners toward the end between, you know, obviously you showed the Luke Kennard one, but also some big wins. So I would say right now they're kind of in a place of like euphoria, but there's also a profession of like, all right, that was that game. Let's move on to the next game. Obviously, including tonight in Detroit, which is where I'm at now. But if you're around the team like I am, everyone's in a pretty great mood, which, you know, at this time of year, couldn't ask for better.
Well, I think that's it's pretty remarkable because you could see it, you could feel it when I watch them. I feel like the likability, the trust, the chemistry is there. And Kobe, these are words I wouldn't necessarily have used about the Lakers throughout the course of the season. I mean, think about it. They had bad losses to bad teams. Now they're having great wins against really good to great teams while still taking care of business here. So you're around the team all the time. What changed?
I mean, part of it is, you know, and I'm right about this. There is some luck involved, and we can get into that a little bit later, but they're honestly just locked in on the details more. I mean, defensively, yeah, sure. Like, again, there may be some shooting luck or they're benefiting from some shooting luck, but guys are playing harder. I mean, Marcus Smart's kind of the orchestrator defensively, locked in on his job, and that's kind of raised the level of everyone else, you know, whether it's LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves. Like, they deserve the criticisms when they deserve them when they aren't playing good defensively. But to a man, every single player on this roster has had good to solid stretches of just defensive play. Again, even the worst defender on the Lakers, or who you think of the worst defender on the Lakers, they're all doing their jobs. And that's essentially all that's expected. This team was not supposed to be, or is not expected to be, a defensive juggernaut. What they can be and what they have been is good to solid most nights. And that's all you can really ask for. The offense takes care of itself. You know, obviously, I should have said this earlier. What's changed? Luka Doncic has gone scorched earth for the most part. Outside of the game in Orlando, cooled down a little bit, but still had, I think, over 30 points in that game. I should have started there. But for the most part, like outside of Luka, like everyone's doing their job. DeAndre Ayton, he's revived himself personally. I mean, between the offensive rebounding, the hustle, like he's no longer just out there just, you know, disappearing anymore. Like he's making an impact in his minutes. So, and that's the case for everyone. The synergy's there, the chemistry's there, the pecking order is there between, you know, Luka. Obviously, you're leading this show, dropping 40 seemingly every other night. But then Austin, you're second in line. LeBron, he's playing his role, and then everyone's just stepped up in terms of effort and hustle. And when you do that, you can find lightning in the bottle and go on a run like this.
Effort, hustle, chemistry, defense. And I love that signing, and frankly, didn't look good on my part for the early portion of the season, but he's played great, and they're making defensive stops. And there seems to be, and you just eloquently described it, that pecking order. So I'm fascinated to get your take. I expect this to sustain. Like, I don't think this is a fluke here. I think this team, and I've been, you know, screaming about this, I think they're for real. Do you think this sustains down the course of the stretch here in the regular season and then into the playoffs?
There are sustainable elements. I mentioned it earlier. The shooting luck, I don't expect that to sustain. I looked it up. During this stretch, I think, 12 wins over the last 13 games. Opponents have shot just over 30% on threes, which is by far by far the worst opponent 3-point percentage since the end of February or beginning of March, however you want to look at it. Like that's not sustainable, especially when you look at the fact that, teams generally shoot, which is around average, around 35 to 36% against the Lakers on threes. The fact that that's gone down 6%, like that's not sustainable. That's something that I expect to actually go against the Lakers at some point, maybe soon, end of season. And if not, then yeah, it's going to make their defense look even better when teams are missing open threes. But the sustainable parts are, again, the pecking order, the hustle. Now, the thing that's actually impressed me the most about this team is, take Orlando, for instance. That's a game that, if you ask me, they're probably losing by double digits, at least 10 to 15, because they had the big lead early. They lost it. And early in the season, I wrote about this. That would be a game in which they would let go of the rope.
That's
the next thing you know, they're down 10, they're down 15, and next thing you know, it's like, well, move on to the next one. Even Austin Reeves said in the locker room in Orlando, maybe at some point, maybe just be on to the next one. This team doesn't have that on to the next one mentality. Like, they're fighting for games every single game, and that's, to me, that's the sustainable part. The X's and O's, the opponent shot making, that can come and go by the game. But that mentality, that's actually the most impressive part about this entire run. Because there have been games I've been watching just like, yeah, if this were December, January, they would have let go of the rope, or they would have lost it there, or that would have been, or these arguments with referees would have cost them the game. But no, they have a stick-to-itness that they just did not have earlier in the winter or late in the fall, which, to me, that's the sustainable part. If you can continue to have that mentality, then, yeah, they can be a tough out in the playoffs.
Yeah, that stick-to-itiveness, you're 100% right, and that's the difference, and I love that. In terms of, that's a game, the Orlando game, you're right, Austin Reeves is right. They would have lost that game earlier in the winter
100%.
or in the fall, without question. You referenced Luka. I mean, I need a thesaurus here. It's kind of crazy. But, Kobe, I really feel like we have to have the MVP discussion, and I'm Tim Bontemps from ESPN is my guy, and, he's got that straw poll, and we can look at DraftKings and look at, who's the favorite and who's not. This is a full season award, and to me, Luka has a real case. What's your take?
He has a case that he should be considered for MVP. I would still have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as the number one spot for MVP. If you ask me to vote right now, I would probably have Shai. I think the highest I could put Luka is 2, and then you could put, Victor Wembanyama, Cade Cunningham, and then Jokic. Those are they would be the guys who filled out my ballot or filled out the remainder of the ballot. Also have to see what happens with Cade, speaking of being in Detroit, just because of the collapsed lung. Will he reach 65 games? But that's a different conversation. Luka, he belongs in that, to me, in that conversation of MVP. But I will say, and JJ's referenced this because we've asked him, why do you not think Luka's gotten more MVP love? That December that he had, obviously we have more context as to what was going on in his personal life, but also with the team. He had a rough-ish December by his standards, and that also was reflected in the team's play. And even, I think this has gone overlooked a little bit, even his February, he did get hurt in February. He missed a few games. But even his February wasn't stellar either. So there's a good chunk in the season where, he had an amazing start, had a great November, and he's been you need a thesaurus. I need like 2 thesaurus just to get – I feel like I'm running out of words to describe writing about this guy every other day, writing about him every day. He's been amazing. I mean, argument for best player in the league for the past 3 to 4 weeks. Just as good as anyone for the most part since January.
Yeah.
But there have just been these gaps, whether it's the shot making hasn't been there. He's turned up the defense, like I said earlier, but there's also been times where the defense wasn't there. And there have been times where even during the Lakers struggles, he would either be a part of those struggles or he wasn't able to lead the team out of it, if that makes sense. Like, we've seen players who, even when the rest of the teams are struggling, and he did keep them afloat during certain stretches, but they're also, again, that December period and also a little bit in February, also missing some time where he was not, he may not have been the reason they were struggling, but he also wasn't great enough to help them overcome their struggles, if that makes sense. So he belongs in the conversation for sure.
Yeah. And how about
But Shai,
LeBron?
to me, is the leading man.
And I'm fine with that. And I think that makes sense. And that's a credit to Luka. I mean, he wasn't on anyone's top 3, top 4, top 5 for vast
100%.
majority of the year. And if you have him, too, behind SGA, I mean, I think that speaks volumes here. How about what's going on with LeBron? And look, historically, I love LeBron. I think Jordan's greatest of all time, and people think that's LeBron slander. I'm like, no, that's Michael Jordan. I'm just kind of mesmerized here, Kobe, because this could be, likely is, you tell me, his final year as a Laker, which was a huge story early, especially with the struggles. Started this winning streak. LeBron's not playing. Team's winning. Reeves and Luka are thriving together. That Bulls game, to me, was a big deal because he came back. Everyone clicked. He has been efficient. He's been a facilitator, dominant when need be. How do you describe what's going on here with LeBron James?
I mean, he's playing his role. And JJ likes to say it that a role is not whether you're starting or coming off the bench. Your role is what the team asks you to do. And since coming back, I mean, some of this was happening before he got hurt, before he missed those few games in March. But he's been everything they've needed him to be. Again, he stepped it up defensively. Yes, he still has his moments where he's a 41-year-old and the defensive intensity or attention may not be there every single play. But for the most part, he does his job on that end of the floor, which is what this team needs him to do, to be locked in, because, they are a more offensive-leaning team. They need everyone, but especially LeBron, to be keyed in defensively. Then offensively, it's been both interesting, not just in terms of his actions, but also his words. Because, look, LeBron still, and JJ make sure to mention this, LeBron's still a higher usage player. He's just not as high of a usage player as, 2012 or 2015 or 2018 LeBron James, which he should not be in year 23 at 41 years old. However, in his words, he's also said, he's mentioned, it starts with Luka and Austin, which is a very important thing for him to say. It's one thing for him to do it and just go out there, but for him to actually confirm what we're seeing with our eyes and saying, this starts with Luka and Austin, and the rest of us, we fill in, basically. To me, I forget if he said it at some point during this trip, and that to me reflects, I guess, the change you've seen. And even JJ spoken about it publicly. Mentioned LeBron has. For it to be out there verbally is important, because then that allows everyone else to fall in line. Everyone else gets the pecking order. So it is fascinating to see LeBron at this stage of his career. He's always played a role. Before that role was being the son of a team. S-U-N-S-O-N. But now he's playing the role that this team needs from him, with the guys, younger ball handlers and Luka and Austin Reeves out there. Now, what this means for his future, if you asked me a month or two ago, I would have been like, the writing seems to be that very little to no chance that he would be coming back to the Lakers. But the important thing is, it's always been said, it's always been put out there that the Lakers are willing to welcome LeBron back to the team beyond this season. And the other thing, part of it is LeBron still doesn't know what he's going to do. So it's still open. It's still open of him returning to the Lakers beyond 25-26.
So let me piggyback off your comments on JJ, whether it's how you deal with stars, which, by the way, matters when you're coaching an NBA team, whether you're Phil Jackson, Pop, you're Red, Pat Riley, whoever it is, there's an art to that. Whether it's X's and O's, you reference a defensive improvement. How much credit do you give to J.J. Redick?
A lot. I mean, I know we talk about Luka and the MVP. I need to think about this more, and I also know it's different because it's 3 instead of 5. But J.J. should be getting some Coach of the Year considerations. If you ask me right now, I don't think I would have him 1, but maybe not even 2. But he deserves considerations for the ballot. Because, again, you're right. It's not easy to navigate a season, when you have, let's just call it what it is, stars who have ego, stars who have, who have investment in the franchise, who have, who are just, stars comes with different level of responsibilities, different level of critiques, different level of attention. And when you have arguably one of the biggest stars in NBA history, not even arguably, just straight up one of the biggest stars in NBA history in LeBron, you have one of the best players in the league right now in Luka. You have an emerging star in Austin Reeves. There are a lot of different personalities. Even if you can get along with those guys, to get everyone on the same page, and that's before even getting to your role players. We know DeAndre Ayton can have an interesting personality. We know he can, it can be up and down with him. To get everyone on the same page, That's not an easy job. And again, it's not just the X's and O's in terms of, what are you drawing up? What's your scheme? It is keeping everyone on the same page, locked in, and on the same mission. And even when things weren't going well, even when it felt like things may have been splintering off, JJ spoke belief and confidence into this group. He maintained belief and confidence in his group while also expressing frustration, which is a very challenging thing to do, because he's also been blunt and honest about, this guy wasn't playing well, or he didn't do his job here, this is what happened here. Still being honest, but all without losing the buy-in of the team. That's difficult, especially for, let's not forget, he's a second-year coach, and not just second-year Lakers coach, second-year coach, period, professionally. So for him to do that, he's on the cusp of potentially a second 50-win season. He deserves a lot of credit, probably a lot more credit than he's gotten up to this point for the Lakers surge recently.
All right, finally, I want to get your take on the big picture, because I've been screaming Lakers are legit. Top 4 team in the NBA, top 3 team in the West. I think unlike last year, they will be able to handle business going up against whoever it is in the first round. I think they have a real shot, even without home court, if they don't get it, to beat San Antonio in the second round. I still, Kobe, have it OKC draw the line, but I put the Lakers and Spurs in that conversation. And San Antonio, frankly, has matched up well against OKC this year. How do you see the top here of the Western Conference, and where do the Lakers fit in?
I'm with you. OKC, definitely number one. You mentioned the Spurs have matched up well against OKC. They've matched up very well against the Lakers as well, winning that season series. I mean, right now, I keep going back and forth between the Lakers and the Nuggets as 3 and 4. Because, look, I know that the Lakers have had, a couple good wins over the Nuggets, or had the win over the Nuggets recently. And they obviously beat them in Denver in January. Denver beat them in Denver early in the month. I mean, we talk about how good Luka is. Jokic is a bad man. I know that Denver team has been decimated by injuries all season. They're just now getting everyone back into the fold, and despite that, they're not that far away from the Lakers. If you put me, in the situation of choosing between the Lakers and the Nuggets in a first-round series, I would probably take Denver barely, slightly, but the Lakers are right there. So I think they're either 3 or 4 for me, but I agree with you. They could also beat this. Like, the Spurs are riding this line of, we talk about it. I know it's a cliche, but do they have the experience to make it deeper into the, make it to the Western Conference Finals? If it is Lakers Spurs in the second round and they fall down 2-1, because I'm assuming that the Lakers would, the Spurs would have home court advantage. If the Lakers win game 3 and they're up 2-1, how do the Spurs respond in that situation? Do they have the collective know-how to fight off that adversity in the postseason? We obviously know Luka does, we know LeBron does, this, even though they may have not done it together, Marcus Smart does, DeAndre Ayton does.
Yes.
This group for the Lakers may have not done it together as a collective, but they all individually come with their own playoff experiences that they can all kind of lean on. The Spurs, I mean, not so much. So that's the one thing that you may hesitate, or that I would hesitate on when it comes to them. But I mean, the Lakers are right there. They're right there. And I probably would agree with you in terms of the pecking order. Denver, I would not sleep on Denver. I would not sleep on Denver. I mean, I remember what they did last season against OKC. Again, they're still at the spot they're at in the standings in the West, despite all the injury stuff they've dealt with. And again, I mean, I know we've talked about Shea, we talked about Luka. Hey, man, one of the last times Jokic didn't get a lot of love for MVP. We saw what he did in 2023. So I wouldn't just dismiss what he could do with this group it seems like once they're getting healthy right now.
Kobe, great stuff. Big fan of your work. Sensational debut here on Schein Time. Make sure you follow and read Kobe in the California Post. Enjoy Detroit. I think the Lakers keep it going, and as always, we appreciate the time. Let's get back to college hoops as we transition from King James to a Pope.
I know you guys had big injuries, but did you maybe learn anything from a resource allocation standpoint from the season?
Well, we've heard so many numbers go around that it just is, we live in a really interesting world. I think that I think we were disappointed that we never got to run with the roster that we thought we had. These guys did an amazing job adjusting. You know, you think about DA came here with one responsibility in mind and one framework for a team, and had to transition through the whole course of the year to be a player that he did not come here to be, and that goes with a lot of guys on our team. We didn't get to play the way that we planned to. We didn't get to play with the personnel we planned to, and all of that changed. And I think our guys raised up, and they made the very, very best of a complicated, difficult situation, roster-wise and health-wise, and I couldn't be more proud of them. You know, their response has been incredible. So, you know, we didn't get to do anything the way we had planned or constructed just because of health situations, but these guys still left us with unbelievable moments and memories, if not getting to the ultimate goal.
Listen, I mean, those are tears of a clown right there. And if you're a Kentucky basketball fan, this was a complete and utter debacle. This was a disgrace. This was a mess. This was a joke. And, you know, for Mark Pope to sit there and poo-poo the $22 million roster, I mean, come on. And you're playing a team yesterday, and Iowa State didn't have one of its key and best players. So, you know, putting together a roster like this with no chemistry, losing 5-7 down the stretch of the season, complete and utter disaster when you look at it from a Kentucky basketball perspective. And you know what? Look where John Calipari is right now versus where Kentucky basketball is. Pretty crystal clear who has absolutely won that divorce. How about Kansas? And we talked about this, obviously, from a St. John's perspective to start the show. Look, based upon health, this could be a spot in a situation where this is it for Bill Self. He kind of went there and didn't have to be pushed post-game, and I just hope that Bill Self is feeling okay. Also, third straight year that Kansas doesn't get to the Sweet 16, and Peterson was a non-factor, and you know, the way that this season was handled was poor. And, you know, I know he's won the 2 championships, but I'll say it again, Bill Self was the most overrated coach in the history of college athletics. You look at his history, okay, where he's been a favorite with the point spread or had the better seed, and the games he's lost in the NCAA tournament, it is absurd. So, again, I want to stress, I hope he's feeling okay physically, but wouldn't be the worst thing if after a great run, wins are wins, championships are championships, they called it a career mutually, and Kansas moved in a different direction, and Bill Self rode off into the sunset. And I want to make this case. This is the sweetest Sweet 16 we've ever seen. The sweetest Sweet 16. I don't want to hear that you missed Cinderella. Not when it comes to these matchups. You could color me absolutely, positively obsessed. I can't get enough. This Sweet 16, it's going to be a banger. The East with St. John's and Duke and Michigan State going up against UConn, that's incredible. Arizona taking on Arkansas, that is just high-level stuff. Rick Barnes gets Tennessee to the Sweet 16, amazing. Texas gets to the Sweet 16, that Texas-Purdue game. Purdue is playing brilliant ball. Give Matt Painter and those guys a lot of credit. That is going to be a sensational game. Michigan has been the best team I've seen so far in the NCAA tournament. And they're not my pick to win it all, but let's make sure we're fair to Michigan here. They've been the best team that I've seen. Alabama, listen, losing their second-best player, non-factor. So that, to me, I think was a huge deal in terms of that matchup. That might be the one where, you know, we get some kind of lopsided event in the Sweet 16. I told you earlier I'm super interested in Iowa and Nebraska in the South. And then Houston and Illinois. Look, I think Houston has been the second best team that I've seen so far in the NCAA tournament, and I am absolutely positively enamored with this Sweet 16. Best set of Sweet 16 games I've ever seen. Is it Thursday yet? Is it Friday yet? I am super amped for the Sweet 16. I don't want to ever see Cinderella ever again. Let's finish big.
Without Jerry McNamara, we wouldn't have won 10 games this year. Okay? Not 10. And everybody's talking to me and writing about Jerry McNamara being overrated. It's the most thing I've seen in 30 years.
So here's what I'm thinking on this Monday. Kevin Durant is an all-time NBA legend. And Kevin Durant should be celebrated at every single turn. I don't think there's any question about that. Look, I think that when you look at Kevin Durant moving past Michael Jordan for all-time points for an NBA career, honestly, it's a ridiculously special accomplishment. Here's the thing when it comes to Kevin Durant, and this has always hit me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks on Saturday night. What fan base felt great for him? And I feel sad. And so much of this is Kevin Durant induced. Let's be crystal clear about that. But Kevin Durant really has no fan base that loves him. And we're talking about a two-time champ, a two-time finals MVP, and that's absolutely incredible. He's been in the finals 4 times in his career, and nobody wants him. No one wants to claim him. Nobody wants to love him. Nobody wants to appreciate him. So I honestly am just ridiculously obsessed here in terms of what Durant has done as a player historically. But I have always defended him when you look at it, going from OKC to Golden State. Because the minute we start ripping athletes for wanting to win and prioritizing a championship, I think we've all lost our minds. The issue was Durant going to the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets are a nondescript franchise that nobody gives a damn about. And if you want to say, okay, that's cool, he'll try and make something in Brooklyn, fine. But then hitching your wagon to Kyrie Irving, who's just not a reliable human being, that was amateur hour, and that made no sense. And if you're a Nets fan, and I want to go back to Game 7, right? That Game 7 against Milwaukee, I once talked to Marv Albert about this. This is Marv Albert, not Skip Bayless. Marv Albert. He called that game, and it was in a loss, the single greatest Game 7 performance ever in the history of the NBA, in a conversation I had with Marv in my SiriusXM radio show. 48 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal in 53 minutes. And that 3 would have ultimately been a 3 if KD didn't wear extra long and extra big shoes. I mean, you can't make that up if you tried. And in a lot of ways, it's just kind of code for bad luck. And look, Durant hurts himself. You know, obviously what transpired by going to Brooklyn, hitching the wagon to Kyrie, demanding the trade to Phoenix. Phoenix was a failure, goes to Houston. It's just a shame that nobody gives a damn about Kevin Durant. He's on Twitter. He's got burner accounts. He's, fighting low with people in the comments. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. I always defend Durant. I love Durant. I defended his move going to Golden State. I can't defend anything else that he's done team-wise since then. But I just found myself on Saturday night feeling sorry for Kevin Durant. What am I betting tonight? Look, if it rains 9 straight days, I'm bringing an umbrella. So I'm going to take the Lakers tonight. The Lakers are going to be the pick. Lakers -2.5, -103. We have been kicking ass and we have been taking names. In terms of what I'm watching tonight, listen, I am just absolutely fired up to go home and sit down and watch some NBA. I am ridiculously excited. And honestly, I can't get enough here when it comes to just the way that all this basketball has just been glorious for us, and I am just absolutely obsessed. That right there, that's a show. If you missed any of it, look, you can go to the California Post Sports, the New York Post Sports, and their YouTube page, and you can check it out. It's what I do. I just want to watch myself over and over and over again. We will see you live tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, right here on Schein Time.